Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first virtual artist talk in our new series, presented as part of our Epic Women's Directing Project, which focuses on the lives and careers of Canadian women working in theatre. I'm so excited to kick off things with the amazing Jillian Keiley, but before I do, I have a few things to note. First off, I want to acknowledge our season sponsor, Nexicom, for their continued support of Fourth Line Theatre, and Exit Realty LiftLock as our major sponsor, and Supporting Roles Interactive Training Incorporated for being the sponsor for our Epic Women's Directing Project. Thank you all. So some housekeeping notes. First, I want to let you know that your audio is muted, and if you'd like to submit a question to Gillian or myself, we'd be happy to answer your questions during the Q&A at the end of the talk. To ask a question, simply click on the Q&A button at the bottom menu on your Zoom video, and you can type the question, and then Lindy, our host, will collect them and give them to us for the Q&A. Also, please be aware that if you mistakenly exit the webinar or have any technical difficulties, you can simply re-enter the webinar by clicking on the Zoom invite link we sent to you earlier today via email, and then you can get back in the same way you arrived. Also, be sure to follow our social media, e-blasts, and visit our website to register for our upcoming virtual events. This Thursday, May 7th, we're excited to present playwright and actor Maya Ardle reading her amazing one-woman show, You Fancy Yourself. And every Tuesday in May, we'll continue the Artist Talk series. On May 12th, I'll be joined by Judith Thompson. On May 19th, by Nancy Polk. And on May 26th, by Fiona Reed. So now I'd like to introduce Jillian Keiley, and I'm not going to say too much about her because I'm hoping most of that will come out in our chat. I did want to say that Gillian is presently the Artistic Director of the National Arts Centre English Theatre, and I just want to read something that was written about Gillian in 2004 by the jury of the Siminovich Award when she won. The jury described Newfoundland director Jillian Keiley's work as startlingly original and radically imaginative. According to the jury citation, she is a visionary, innovative artist who experiments with form and content that have magical results for audiences and performers alike. Simultaneously cerebral and visceral, her productions explore the parameters of theater art, often with powerful effect. Will you all join me, please, in welcoming Jillian Keiley? Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you so much for joining me on our very first. You're like the ultimate victim of trying this artist talk online. So thank you so much.
If I'm going to be the victim, you have to show the picture to your left.
I know. Well, maybe I will. If it goes well, I'll show the picture to my left to people in my dining room. So I'm in my dining room in Scarborough. Where are you?
I'm in my dining room in, or I don't even know what it is. My husband has a studio in Newfoundland where we live most of the year, some of the year. And I'm in the studio. I'm in his studio, which also at this time is our dining room.
Okay. So I just assumed you'd be in Ottawa.
Nope. I'm in Newfoundland right now.
Are you in St. John's?
I'm on the north of St. John's, just about 5 minutes from the airport.
Okay, so people who know St. John's will know where that is. I do not, so that doesn't mean a lot to me, but well, welcome from St. John's. Thrilling to have you here. So I want to pressure test Wikipedia to start with. So I understand from Wikipedia that you were born in Goulds.
The Goulds, yep.
In Goulds, Newfoundland. And so then I searched Goulds, and they said that the two most famous people to come out of Goulds were both two women who were both on Canada's Worst Driver. One of them is Jillian Keiley. Is that you?
Not me. It's not me. It's a Gillian. I know the fellow who the fellow who is the Canada's Worst Driver guy, Andrew Younghusband, is a dear friend of ours, and we spend a lot of time with him actually in the summers. And Jillian Keiley, he said, I couldn't believe it, Jillian Keiley from the Ghouls. And I thought it was for sure you, but I am a terrible driver, there's no doubt. But I'm not that terrible.
Okay.
And it's a girl who married a guy who I knew in the Ghouls, and her name was Gillian, and she married a guy. So I came by it naturally.
Okay.
Came straight into it.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's so funny. What is the chances? So you call the place where you were born and raised the Ghouls?
Yes, with the article.
Okay, all right. So I'm interested in your lineage in Newfoundland. Is your family first generation, or is it like since the Vikings?
Way back. I'm not a Viking, but Irish. And from what I understand, both sides are from Cork. But there was a lot of people came to Newfoundland, in the 1700s and, 16, I think the year The Tempest was written was the year that Newfoundland was first settled, the first English settlement in Newfoundland in Cupid's, actually, where there's a theater festival. The Perchance Theater Festival does Shakespeare in Cupid's. It was the first English settlement, and it was incorporated the year that The Tempest was made.
Wow.
So I wonder sometimes if The Tempest, because it's so brutal and stormy and all those things, if The Tempest was word getting back about Newfoundland. But I don't know. I mean, I think if you were coming to Newfoundland in the 1600s, you weren't returning with letters, but who knows?
Yeah.
Anyways, so we've been here. My family on both sides have been here for years and years and years, mostly on the south coast. My dad's family's from Petty Harbour and the Goulds. So Petty Harbour and the Goulds are quite close to one another. And in terms of an artistic lineage, the Goulds is a really interesting place. It's this. It's a town that was just south of St. John's. It used to take 45 minutes to get to town. Now it takes about 25. And it's considered a kind of suburb of St. John's, but St. John's, we wanted to get water and sewer and garbage pickup. So the Goulds joined St. John's, but St. John's actually had to go around another town, which refused to join in order to absorb the Goulds. So I think the Goulds is still independent, even though technically now we get our bus service and our garbage. We never got water and sewer, though.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, isn't that
Never
interesting?
got it.
I wondered if it had become a kind of bedroom community based on how St. John's had grown.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's any Newfoundlanders listening, but people will know that there's a real divide between people who live in town and people who live around the bay, townies and baymen. And it's mostly for fun, almost entirely for fun. But every now and again, it gets spiky. And the Goulds used to fall on the bay side. And now technically it falls on the town side. People aren't that comfortable with it.
That's so interesting. I love stuff like that. And I want to talk a bit more about the conflict inside the Goulds when we talk in another minute. But you went to St. Kevin's High School, and I'm curious, is that your theater genesis? Like, what is your origin story around becoming a theater practitioner?
We did have a theater class. A teacher came in from town, St. John's. A teacher came in from St. John's when I was in grade 10 or 11 and directed a play that is just awful called The Still Hearth. And it was a kind of melodrama, a Newfoundland Gothic, I guess, but it was about a guy and dad used to beat him and he was religious. I don't know. It was very, very dramatic. And this guy came in and directed us in this show. And at the time, his directions mostly were, we had to perform in the gym. So we're like, he would stand in the back of the gym and say, louder, slower, faster. It was good. This is how I direct now. And then he also told me to never turn around on stage. So we used to, we'd cross upstage, just facing up. So he was great. And Tony Duffnay is his name. And he had a massive influence. I cannot overestimate or overstate the influence that Tony Duffnay had on us. And so many people who work in the arts today, people who sing at the Metropolitan Opera, people who are, on big television shows down in the States, like big important stars. Alan Doyle was in his class, who was in Great Big Sea. Any Great Big Sea fans? We all went to school together, and Tony Duffnay had this massive impact on us, and that was a really big important part of kind of learning that I loved storytelling, I guess. And then my mother was a nursing instructor, and every year, nobody understood why I wanted to do this, but I did. I guess it called to me. But every year, the nurses is Catholic. In Newfoundland, it's either Catholic or Protestant. Like, we didn't have other people.
It's the same place where my theater is in Millbrook.
You got it.
I call it the Two Solitudes, and I read something that you refer to it as that too. I was like,
It is that. It was that. Well, you just went to a Catholic school, or you went to a not Catholic school, and the not Catholic school is all Protestants. I mean, we didn't meet. There wasn't a lot of money here. Really wasn't for a long time, and now that's come back again. But we did have a couple of years, and then in those couple of years, a lot of people came, immigrants came, but we didn't have immigration. It was just this kind of these two streams. And my mother was a teacher in this nursing school, and every year I would go and watch this nursing graduation. I was fascinated by it. And all it was all women, but woman after woman after woman in these white, perfectly white, pressed, starched, the hat, and this big bouquet of red roses. And they would walk in, and they had like a kind of, like the way it was blocked was so extraordinarily beautiful. And so it'd be like they just pulse out from here, and they'd float over, and the archbishop, they'd kneel, and the archbishop would give them a strip on their hat. I don't know. Right. But, and then all the women would go, and they'd line up on this, this set of, risers, and they'd stand up, and then, one would get, the nicest, and one would get the smartest or whatever, but they all looked like identical people to me. So it was my first exposure to staging, and my first exposure to a chorus, perhaps, but I just was fascinated by all these beautiful women being together. And then it was so beautiful. And then they'd sing the St. Clair Spirit song, and they'd sing "Make Me a Channel of Your Peace," or whatever those songs are that nurses would engender. And it was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And, it was strange that I kept wanting to go, because even the way I described it is probably like, I can't think of anything more boring than seeing the same person, like for an hour, you'd watch these graduates. But I guess, somebody asked me that, when was the first time you ever saw something staged that you loved? And I think that was it. And I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Wow. Well, it reminds me of the Alice's on the bicycles in Alice at Stratford.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, very much. I adored, and I want to talk to you about a bit more. So did you know as a high school student it was going to be theater school? Did you go to Memorial before you went to York? Like, what was the genesis sort of your education?
Yeah, I auditioned for National Theatre School. Mr. Tony Dauphiné, encouraged me to audition. I don't know where I got the information that there was a National Theatre School, but I auditioned to be an actor because I didn't know other parts. And I was never a good actor. I don't even know why. I got a call back. And so they brought me in for a call back, and it was a disaster. They had this thing where they asked for 3 pieces, a Shakespeare, and then a piece of your own choosing that's modern. And then you have to do a play in 3 minutes. Did you ever audition for National Theatre School?
No, I auditioned and got into York as an actor because the same thing. I didn't know. I mean, I wanted to be a director, but I didn't know there was no stream for that in 1985.
Yeah, exactly. There was no stream for any of it, actually. Yeah. And now they're taking away directing again, but we can talk about that. I'd like to talk about that.
Okay.
Director education, because I think it's really important, because it's not, you don't graduate to be a director. You can, but I think, anyway, let's talk about that after.
All right, I put it down.
I think that oh my gosh, now I've lost
National Theatre School.
Oh yeah,
audition and the callback.
So the callback came, and they asked me to do my 3-minute piece, and of course I missed that. I don't know why. It was the most important thing in my life, but I didn't know I had to do it. I kind of missed that bit of information. Right. And so I was in Montreal, like I'd never been anywhere. I was by myself, completely by myself. 17, I guess I was, 16 or 17 years old. Because I was still in high school when I auditioned. And it was a big deal. And I showed up, and Perry Schneiderman, and I only remember this story so well because somebody else told it in front of a lot of people a couple of years ago, who was on the audition panel saying, well, look at her now. She's doing really well. But at the time, she was the worst thing that ever happened to National Theatre School, was this audition where I went in and they said, oh, well, you don't have your 3-minute piece. I was like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And he said, well, go away and come back. And if you'd like to come back, we can see at 4 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. They said, we can see at 4 o'clock. If you want to come back, we'll see you. I said, okay. And so I went to a Saint Hubert on Saint Denis. And the only play I knew inside out, top to tail, without a break and a pause, was Jesus Christ Superstar. So I took my 5 hours. Boil me alive. Can you imagine a 3-minute Jesus Christ Superstar, including all the characters and me dying on a crucifixion at the end of my 3 minutes? Like, because that's how the play ends. So there I am, and that's the last image, and I didn't get in. So I didn't get it. I mean, it was awful. I mean, it was awful. It was awful for me in every way. But anyway, so somebody who was on the audition panel told that story. Thank you.
God. So first of all, I have a whole obsession with Jesus Christ Superstar. So I actually think I would enjoy your 3-minute version of it if it ever comes out as a party trick. So what happens? You go back to Newfoundland, and is it Memorial next, or is it York?
Yeah. So I went to Memorial for 2 years. They didn't have a theater program at the time, but they did do 2 classes in theater that I took. I befriended, I used to work on the summer Shakespeare's.
With Gordon Jones, right?
With Gordon Jones, yeah, Dr. Gordon Jones, yeah. And he used to run the summer Shakespeare program, which is really fantastic, generous thing that he used to do. All the kids in Newfoundland, well, all of us, got cast or worked on it, however way. And I played Helen at A Midsummer Night's Dream because I was so tall. That's how I got cast. Right? So I got cast. He literally lined up everybody from left side of the stage to right, and then I was the tallest. The little puppet was the shortest.
Yeah.
So Lise and I got cast, and that's how we did. It was very funny, I'm sure. And play worked. It was fine. And then the next year, he asked me if I wanted to play the nurse, and I said, I really want to assistant direct you. And I was young. That was my first year out of school. So I said, I'd love to assistant direct you. And he was so good. What he did was he set me up in the dressing room underneath the theater, because we're in the university, we were allowed to rehearse on stage, like luxuries that you don't know you have. So we were rehearsing the thing on stage, but underneath the stage was the dressing room, and I used to call it the pit, because it was dark. It was like underground in this dressing room that was in a cave, basically. And it was my job to prep the actors. So I would go through all the text. I would do all I guess what the Shakespeare coaches now do at Stratford. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, no clue. And I had all these Shakespeare books, and I had The Onion. Do you know The Onion? Where, you'd look up, it's called The Onion. So you'd have a word that you'd come across, or a phrase or whatever. And you'd have to look it up in The Onion.
Yeah. What
the thing meant, what the resonances were, what was relevant, whatever. And so I would look it up. So it was just this painstaking task of translating it. I started writing out the texts, which I still do, but I was handwritten the whole text out. And then, so I'd understand it. Like, I had to understand the text so that I could tell the actors. And of course, we're all kids, and like amateur kids. Like, very rarely we had anybody who'd been to school or even done another play before. But anyway, I was his assistant for 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. 7 maybe.
So you'd still come back when you were at York after your 2 years at Memorial. You'd still come back from York and work with Dr. Jones. What happened at York? Because I was reading an interview you did with somebody at like an alumni magazine or something at York a few years ago, and you created this piece, the In Your Dreams Freud piece with Chris. Is it Chris Tolley? Is that how you say it? So how do you go, from working on Shakespeare with The Onion to starting imagining creating your own work? Especially a piece that what you explained it is poking fun of everything you were learning at York in the BFA program. Is this right?
Yep.
Okay. So tell me about that.
Yeah, that show is very important to me. Chris Tolley is now the producer of Play Me, if you know the Play Me podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
Chris.
okay.
That's
Right.
Chris's show. Chris and Laura Mullen and I were all in the same class at York, just like you. So we went to school together. We were in this directing program, this directing stream. And Chris and I had a very intense relationship. We weren't boyfriend, girlfriend that way. But we were completely entwined with each other. We were so, we'd fight all the time, and we loved each other, and we made each other laugh all the time. And Chris didn't have to do anything. He's so funny. He's such a funny guy. He would have to do almost nothing, and I would be under the table, like dying laughing. He's such a funny guy. And so and I guess I entertained him too, but we would be like, I was working like crazy, like trying to make enough money to pay for tuition. And there would Chris be, you know, and we'd be listening to something about theater history, and Chris would like make some quip, put it on a piece of paper and send it to me. And I was gone. Like I would be gone for the rest of the class. I couldn't even, he just struck me so funny. Anyway, marvelous fellow. And we're still friends. Anyway, he and I used to make fun of the classes we were in. We just spent a lot of time doing that. And we had co-directed a show, you know, the Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. So we wanted to do a play together that had a lot of characters. And I was like, I know a play that has a lot of characters. Like, it's a one-person show, Jill. But she plays a lot of characters. So we said, well, what if we took this play that has a lot of characters and actually made it a lot of characters? So we hired, didn't pay anybody, but we put up audition posters, and we just always were thinking really big. Like we were always thinking really big. And York was great because even though the teachers paid, they would pay and not pay attention. Like, I don't think any teacher saw In Your Dreams for it. I don't know. I don't think so. But they let us have access, and I don't know if that's possible anymore, but we had access to everything. We were just like, we weren't allowed at the power tools. I think that was it. We had access to rehearsal rooms. We had access to anything, and we would do anything. Like we would beg, borrow, steal, promise stuff, you know, do favors for people in exchange for photocopies. Like we'd do anything to get a play up. Like we just had that hunger to do it. And for Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, we'd done that exact thing. I don't remember how we did it. Some deal we had, somebody who worked at the library. I don't know, we were buying them booze or something. I don't even remember. We were doing something bad. Not illegal, probably. Not bad, but you could run off 1,000 photocopies or whatever at the library. I don't know. Somebody was helping us out with something. So we had all these posters for Search for Signs of Intelligent Life. And we plastered the entire university with these posters for this play that was only going to play in the studio, which could only seat 30 people. But we printed like 1,000. Chris designed this beautiful poster, put it up everywhere. And out of the side of Chris's mouth one day, he said to our teacher, Peter McKinnon, who I'm sure you would have remembered. And he said, Peter, what are the chances that we'll get caught for not having the royalties for this? Peter said, I wouldn't risk it. And did we not go through the entire university and pull every single poster down? It was just like, but the growing pain, like all that learning, because it took us a week to put up the posters. And then it took us a full week and we were so scared. Like we were so scared. And so we went and we took down every one, and then we were going to cancel the show. Like it was so amazing. But anyway, In Your Dreams, Freud was all about that. It was all about theater students who took themselves too seriously.
And 45 in the cast, or did I make that up?
No, you are correct. Yeah.
Wow. And then you moved that play, very specific to your experience at York. And so just so I should tell, full disclosure, I got into York as an acting student. I did the auditions. And that summer of 1985, I decided I couldn't go to York. I needed to find myself. And so I took a job as a nanny in Fort McMurray. So my life took like this crazy veering that ends me up being an artistic director of a theater company, but not from York. So I'm so curious about how on earth you think in your dreams Freud is a good idea in St. John's.
I don't know. It was a big hit. Like we didn't understand that math at the time either. You know, we were playing to a 200. It's very, I have to say, the script was very funny. The script really was very funny. Chris and I used to make each other laugh so much that I guess we just wrote it all down. And we were very much like the two people whose fantasia this is. The two theater students. There's Aristotle's in the play, Freud is in the play. Like anybody we learned in school shows up as a character in this play about how, I won't get into what the play is about because it's too complicated, but the whole point is, why do we watch, you know, who wrote the book on Peter Brook? Peter Brook did. The whole thing is about how theater is just one grand circle of theater people loving theater, people loving theater, people loving theater people. And hello. And, and it's all about this specialized knowledge that we have that makes us so thrilled to understand Shakespeare. I was like really making fun of myself about the Shakespeare thing, really making fun of, anyway, we were just kind of torturing ourselves and everybody else that we knew with it. Anyway, when we came back to Newfoundland, it was such a hit at York. And we didn't understand that if you have 45 people, of course you're going to sell out.
Yeah.
If you have 45 people in a play, you're going to sell out. We just thought, oh, everybody loves this show. It's already sold out. You know, we didn't really get people, or we didn't understand that at the time. But then when I came home, and it was so much fun to do, we just had so much fun doing it. And so when I came back to Newfoundland, I was like, well, I'm going to start a theater company, of course. And I had already been working with Resource Center for the Arts.
And this is with Lois Brown, right?
Yeah. So there was a transition period when I was working with Lois Brown as my summer employment. Like I was doing the summer Shakespeares on nights and weekends. And my day job was running the student program at the Resource Center for the Arts. And it was just so much fun. And I said, well, we got to do it. So we produced it at Resource Center for the Arts, and then we started the company. We started the theater company, Artistic Fraud, because Artistic Fraud was the name of the company at York, and that's why we're called Artistic Fraud of Newfoundland, because it's a subsidiary.
Oh, I didn't know that, because I read something where you were, you know, poking fun at yourselves for calling your theater company Artistic Fraud. I read something like it's hard to get a check cashed when that's the name of your theater.
It's
company.
A terrible name. I never thought it would last 30 years.
Who did? I mean, Fourth Line Theater is like, if we get some version of a season in this year, I mean, this will be the 29th and next year will be 30. I mean, these things weren't supposed to happen, right? It's bizarre to me. So let's jump into Artistic Fraud. And so the theater starts, and then you and Robert chafe, two kids from the Goulds, but one Protestant, one Catholic. How do you meet Robert?
So in my summer job at the Resource Center for the Arts, LSPU Hall, that my summer job was to make something that would involve young people, that would get young people excited about the theater. So I started this summer cabaret series that was really good. And the trick that I had with it, I was thinking like a producer pretty young, and the trick that I had with this summer cabaret series was that you had to audition the Thursday before. So the cabaret series ran Friday and Saturday nights, and you had to audition the previous Thursday. Okay. So if you auditioned on the 7th, you could play on the 16th or something. And what that did, I didn't actually care what people did. I was like, it has to be under 3 minutes. If you can fit in one of these words, like birth, death, and chocolate or something, like whatever, every night would have a theme of some kind. If you fit in one of those, that's great. But don't worry about it. I have to see you audition. And then I acted like there was way more people auditioning than there were. So people worked really hard on their pieces beforehand. And so they auditioned on the Thursday, and then they had another week after the piece was ready. And so all the pieces that people played were really cooked. They were really good by the time they did them. And everything had to be under 3 minutes. So if something did stink a little,
right, at least it's only going to be
only 3 minutes. But these cabarets were really great fun. And Robert came and did a couple of these cabarets. I think he read from one of his plays, early plays in one of them. And he ended up being a host of the cabaret. And then I cast him in, and that's where we met during this splash thing. And then I cast him in Your Dreams, Freud, as, I don't know, Creon or somebody. And the guy playing Freud got a government job and left. And so I asked Robert if he'd take over and play Freud in Your Dreams, Freud. And he was so funny. He was so funny. It was beautiful.
And so you knew him as an actor and as a writer to start with, but your relationship is more director-writer, yes?
Yeah. So I'm the director and he's the writer on most of our stuff. He has acted for me a bit, but mostly it's actor-writer, yeah. And he our first relationship was that.
And is the first play, maybe this is wrong, Under Wraps? That's your first one.
That we made together, yeah.
You made together, and you worked for a long time with, am I going to say her name? Patrina Bromley, as well as a composer, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Artistic Fraud's now 30 years. What is it about the relationship between you and Robert that is so lasting, so substantive? How do you think about it?
I think it's one of those, it's lifelong, he was my best man at my wedding, or my whatever that is. He's really important to me, clearly, but and we did both grow up in the Goulds, never met in the Goulds, of course, because he was Protestant. Mm-hmm. But I think it's because we came up together and really came up together. We fight a lot.
Well, I wanted to ask, I'm so glad you mentioned it. I have things in my mind that are off topic, off limits till you mention it.
Oh, okay. We fight a lot, but I don't mean we fight like we never go home angry. Like, it's not like that. But if I don't like a line, or if he doesn't like something I'm doing, he'll call me on it and I'll call him on. Like, nothing, what makes us good together or inspired together is that I can't get away with anything with that guy. Like, I can't get away with anything. He trusts me and I trust him. But he doesn't like to direct, but he's got a director's mind. And I'm not a good writer, but I know what I need to hear in a script. So
you know text.
I know text, but
structure and
yeah. And so he really I challenge him a lot. And he'll say, no, it's, this line is this way, it's phrased this way because of this whatever relationship. And I'll go, yeah, but it doesn't make any sense. And then he has to fight for it. And then once he fights for it, I'll go, okay, makes sense to me now, thank you. Or he'll change the word, or, just, rearrange a sentence or something.
Yeah. So
that the sense is something that I can put up with. And he's a really good writer. Like, I just think, I don't know if you haven't seen his work, but you want to read a good book. He published a book a little while back called Two Man Tent. That's just, some of the stories are just extraordinary short stories, like Alice Munro kind of.
Oh, wow.
Paintings of people. He understands people so well. And over the years, and I say we fight, it's like we pick at each other, we're kind of like, it's not like mommy and daddy are fighting. It's not like that, but it's like, we just pick at each other. We're not afraid to challenge each other. And
well, good art comes from that, don't you think? Like, you're not holding anything back, either of you, so that if artistic excellence is the only goal or the main goal, that's what you're both invested in, right?
Yeah, I think so. We have to be careful, because I like his work so much that I have to be careful that I'm as sharp as I have to be with him, because sometimes I'll indulge because it's like, oh no, it's too gorgeous,
Oh yeah.
But I have to stay sharp on him.
So I want to ask you about and I'm going to say the word right, kaleidography. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was actually at the Simonovich Awards in 2004. I think it was at Art House when you won.
Yeah.
And heard your speech and was fascinated by calligraphy. Can you tell me, it's bizarre to read about. So my questions are, I have a million questions about it. Like, are you a musician yourself? Is that where your sense of music comes from in terms of it? But I'm just going to let you, can you describe it to us and tell us where it comes from?
Sure. I don't do it very often now. I did try recently. I did try a little bit of it in outside of Artistic Fraud in one of the Stratford shows. I did a little bit in Never Ending Story, but it's just it's so funny. I don't feel comfortable talking about it anymore because I don't do it anymore.
Right.
It's not that I can't do it. It's just, it's so incredibly time consuming and brain consuming. And I spent a lot of time doing it, but I don't have the headspace anymore to do it. And I feel really badly about it. And I also felt really weird about it being called kaleidography, like I'd invented a thing. It's just blocking. It's just blocking. So it's like, so I can explain what it is. So it's or I have to show you a picture or something, but it's a way of, philosophically, it's a way of thinking about a script. Instead of thinking about it like pages, you think about it like linearly, like a piece of music. So so you start, at minute 1 or second 0, and you go until second, minute 120, and you line up your events. So here's your text track, and this was a little pre-Pro Tools too, so I was smart at the time.
Yeah.
So there's like, you've got your text track. So you think about your text like that, because your text is linear a long time, right? So you're running along a timeline. So your text goes like this instead of like that. And so your text is here, and then you've got your scenics. So and I used a lot of the time, I used people as the scenic for this because your people can move really fast. People can move faster than objects, usually. And so, or your people are motivating the objects. And that's what I like the look of anyway. A chorus, right? All the nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the bottom, you have your music track. And the music track can be just a click track. It can just be something that's counting. I've done stuff that's just, you never know there was music under it. But there is music. Or there's a click track, or there's a conductor. So what is happening is, you have your, if you use text, there's your text event, and then there's your image event, and there's music event. So for example, if you want everybody to snap into place at the one time, that's exciting for an audience. Like if, I don't know, like in Under Wraps. So there's a grid on the floor. You can imagine a grid on the floor. And so there's a grid on the floor, and I want the guy playing John to sit down. And it just looks like he sits down, but there's nothing underneath him. But as fast as he gets the decision to sit down, there's 4 people racing to their grid point underneath him, and they fly into place. There's a piece of fabric over everybody. They fly into place, the fabric lands, and he sits. So there's magic to that.
Yeah.
And that's what you can do with that. You can make this really precise lining up of text, music, and action that is really, I always found it really exciting to watch. But I think there was also problems with it because it's so technically based that some audience members, I mean, it did well. We toured a lot.
Yeah.
Toured a lot. But some audience members would find it cold because the actors were
There was
so
a distance, an emotional distance.
Yeah,
in a way.
they were always conscious. They were never allowed to be lost in they were never allowed to be fully lost in the emotional. They always had to have a little part of their brain on so that they were lining themselves up to the right point in space. So a little tricky, a little more like dance. However, the more they did it, the more excellent they got at it, the more it becomes like jazz, the more it becomes like you be in your place, but then you could be free within that moment. So a lot of the trick with kaleidography, which is why we call it like that, like a kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
Like you twist the thing, you stop and you see a new image, twist the thing.
I didn't understand where the name came from. That makes total sense.
Yeah, that's it. But
wow. Yeah, I read this really cool thing. I won't read it, but I don't know where this is from. It just talks about the central element controlling all that happens on stage is time. Notations. Using our system of music notations and grid placement, we were able to create visually complex scenes through relatively simple choreography. You wrote that, I think, a long time ago about it, and it makes total sense, but it must be incredibly time-consuming pre-rehearsal for you to lay it all out.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it really is.
How long? How long does it take?
Depends on the show. It depends on the show, and it depends on where I'm going with it. I wrote a piece for a festival in Newfoundland called the Sound Symposium. That was a really important piece to me in my own work, called The Cheat. It had 81 people in it.
Nice.
And a conductor, and it was silent. And it was 81 people, students, or called students, on a 9x9 grid. So it was a 9x9 tiers of people, so 9 people across, 9 people up. And they were cheating on a math exam. And we used, that was the story. And we used Bach's Little Fugue in G minor. So go like da 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 da, you know the one. Mm-hmm. And so that fugue has 5 voices. So there's 5. There's this one line, and then there's another line that actually inverts the first line. And then there's another thread that harmonizes with both. And then there's a third thread that is counterpunctal to that. And so what we did was divide this group of 9 into versions of persons who either were whispering to this side, looking at this person's thing, writing, tearing up paper, spitballs, whispering to the person in front of them, throwing things at people. Like, so it was this thing, and each one of the notes lined up to something somebody was doing. So you would learn the piece. Your piece would be completely unique. You wouldn't be the same as the person next to you, because you would switch voices all the time. Whenever there was I call it a scene. I'm sure it was called something else in music. I can't remember. But there would be like one iteration of the thing, and then the scene would change, and then which group you belong to. And what that allowed us to do was make things like rings, so that it was only 2, the central group, and then the ring around that, the ring around that, the ring around that, and they were all doing the same thing. Or checkerboard, or we could do something where we went up in a row and down in a row. We did things like every 5th person, so you ended up with this kind of crazy thing. Like, it was crazy to do, but it was only 12 minutes long. And so, and I had a conductor on that. Like, it was a conductor who just like did the thing. And everybody followed him.
In your brain, I don't mean to jump, but in your brain, you're conceiving all of that. That's hundreds of different sequences of the company, right?
I'll show you something.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
I just happened to have it nearby. I really wasn't intending to talk about the cheat, but this is one of my favorite pictures of me working. And this is me and Dave Summers. I don't know, can you see it?
Yeah. It's in a frame. I'll
take it up. This is me and the fellow who helped me. This is the handwritten cheat.
No.
Yeah, that's how we made it. So this is a bar. And every single %, this is handwritten.
And so wait, every single kind of line is something that someone has to do?
Yeah, so this is one bar, right? Each one of these pages.
And you said it's 12 bars? Is that what you said?
Oh, no, it's probably more than one bar. It's probably 3 bars on a row.
Okay.
But each one, there was 81. So this person would be A1, this person be A2, this person be A3, A4, A5, whatever. So we did that. And this Dave Summers, who's a sweetheart, he's still on our board of directors. So we taped up, because he had an apartment that was like a box, and we taped up Dave's apartment. We put every single one of these. So his whole apartment was these
So then
things.
you bring those into the rehearsal hall, and so if I'm A1, I go and find all my A1, or how do you get it out into their bodies?
No, and the funny thing is, this is they had just come up with the computer program. Dave is a computer engineer, and they had just come up with the computer program that helps you write music. What's that called?
Oh my gosh, don't ask me.
I can't remember. It's not what it is now, but it's whatever it was at the time. And Dave was trying to help me convert this handwritten stuff into this new program that you could write music by tapping it in. So first we did that, then we tapped it in, and then we took each one of those pages. How do we do it? Each one of those pages got put in a stack, and then so the whole cheat was about this big. It was like a giant thing, and then we photocopied that and distributed to the.
Did each company member get the full cheat? Like the full?
No, each company member just got their own. So each company member's thing was maybe this big.
My gosh, because it was interesting that you think, I hadn't thought about this since 1992. We were so poor the first year at Fourth Line Theatre with our play The Cavan Blazers, about the Protestant Catholic conflict in our township, which is our signature play. But we were so poor, we couldn't afford to copy the full script for everyone. So there were 54 people in the cast. You only got your scenes or your pages. The principal actors got the whole play, but most people didn't.
These guys didn't need all the other.
No, not at this.
No, but wow. I mean,
I have so many questions for you, but my one question, I guess, right now is, how has your art practice shifted? You're not using kaleidoscope,
like a kaleidoscope.
Kaleidography very much. I know that's how I have to figure it. So you don't use it as much. Why have you put it to the side? I mean, maybe it's obvious because it's time consuming. And how has your art practice changed, and what is it like now?
Well, I think I still think about plays as, I think what that did, and I did it for a long time, I have to say, like I ran Artistic Fraud, and that was our central premise, was this thing. After we started doing it, we made Under Wraps in 1996, I think. And the cheat was in 1995. So, or I don't know, it all happened at the one time. But I had started doing an experiment in it at York, this little tiny experiment, because I was trying to do commedia and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out commedia for the world. And I was frustrated because I couldn't get the actors to hit each other at the right time, or trip up at the right time, or fall. I wanted somebody to fall and the other person to catch them, because I had loved theater. Miss Gilmore they were my heroes. They still are in a lot of ways. And I just thought they were magic to me. And I wanted to do a Theater Smith Gilmore style piece. And my teacher, who was Anatole Schlosser at the time, wonderful man, he said, "Jillian, you'll never get that timing." And he was right. He said, "You'll never get that timing because your actors don't know each other. If you want to get real commedia and you look at Theater Smith Gilmore, they're a family. The two of them are a family, and then anybody they have with them on their shows is also part of their family. So you you only get that timing when you repeat. Even if you do a different play, you're still repeating the same, the same collision happens in a different play. So I think that was a really important lesson for me. And so I said, well, what if you could time it? What if you could? What else can make you have those collisions? Music is the only thing that I knew of that could have you harmonize in the same way that Theodore Smith Gilmore was able to harmonize.
Wow, it's amazing. It's amazing that you created this thing.
Well, nobody else does it, so
well,
it's kind of irrelevant.
It's not. I know, but I guess the thing is, it's time consuming, and we have such short rehearsal periods. I mean, at Fourth Line, we're lucky we have 4 weeks. I hear about summer theaters that put up full musicals in 2 weeks. Like, we don't have. I remember hearing about somebody, a Canadian director, who went and directed maybe in Germany, but in Europe, and he had 10 weeks, and he directed the entire play in 3 weeks, and then he was like, "Oh Lord," and he kind of had to start again to direct it again, because we don't always get to go as deep in the exploration. Like I worked a bit with Felix Barrett, Sleep No More, on his other show, and they can go so deep in a different way than us. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like your work like that is going deep in a different way than we can always go. Would you agree? Or
again, I don't know. People found it cold, so I can't say. But I mean, they didn't find it cold. I don't know. I don't mean to denigrate it. I'm sure lots of people liked it. Very vulnerable to criticism for whatever reason.
Well, because it's your art, it's your blood, it's your soul out there. I don't know.
You do work so hard. I mean, I just think about this. She was really young, doing a lot of work.
Look at all those pages you wrote.
She was so little. Oh my God. I was never little, but I was always working really hard.
We were young. You were just tall and young.
Very tall, very young. But anyways, I think about that. It's so hard to say. It's not that I don't like to do it. I'd love to go back and actually do one again. But what I did learn from doing that for so long is to think about plays in that way. And I still do. So even though I still prepare a script in the same way, in that I know everything that's going to happen visually and musically. I have a good concept of every single moment of the play, right up until the end, and then we add the actors, and then everything's up for grabs again. But I never come with a blank script. I always write the script out on a Word document, and I can tell you about how I make these Uber scripts.
Yes, tell me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm going to be teaching it, actually. I'm going to be teaching it at Graham.
With this Ghostlight thing that's
yeah.
just been announced? Oh, that's okay. Well, it's probably sold out already, but I want to hear more about it. So
I haven't announced it officially yet, so you're the first to know.
Okay, well,
you guys, but it's something that I still do. So I think it's still part of what I do, I guess.
Why do you write the whole script out?
Because I need to know the script inside out. But I also need a document. I also really need a document to be able to untangle the show beforehand for me. So I start working with the designers. I have a great relationship with the few designers that I work with are really amazing. And so I type out the script, and I have all the cuts or whatever is going on with the script. And then I start to work with the assistant director, the designers, dramaturg, if there is one. And I start laying in pictures. Maybe it's a sketch from me, maybe it's a drawing by the designer. And I put it in a Google Doc form so that if you're reading the script, you'll see, she enters and there's a picture of the image of her entering, or whatever, what the room looks like. Or, it's cold in here, isn't it? And then maybe there's a picture of the coat that we're hoping, the design of the coat. And the script goes through many iterations. So it could just be like the most basic sketch, or it could just be an idea, but it'll end up in that document. So while this team, the prep team, I call ourselves sometimes the prep team, while we're preparing, because we're not preparing this text document. We're not preparing this text document. We're using the text document as the source material to prepare the production script. And the production script is a production document that's a shared production document, because the actors are they're not going to be in a script. They're going to be in a production. And so I think about that production document as a time-based document, as something that has music element, that has text element, that has design element, that has all down the side dramaturgical notes, all down the side key, like poetry here, like key information. Katie Mitchell's book, she talks about find the poetry and all this stuff. Like this is reflected in Act 2. We see this again in Act 3, whatever. So all of those, dramaturgical notes down the side, and inside the body of the text, we have everything, so that a couple of weeks before the first day of actor rehearsal, I'll sit down with my entire team, technical directors, anybody who'll come, designers, everybody. We'll sit down and we'll read the script with all the stage directions. So then everybody is super clear on not what the story is just. We did that earlier, but on that last day before we bring in the actors, everybody's clear. The kid's on a horse. The horse lights up. Only the middle of the horse is not lit. We have to have a dog. The dog lights up. The dog enters at the end. Like that stuff that isn't in the script, but needs to be understood because there's so many. And with these big shows like Neverending Story or Alice or, I don't know, so many of them, Anne Frank, any of them, the Christmas Carol that I do, any of those shows that have interlocking, time-dependent elements that are so essential to that clicking moment, that moment of magic, they have to be in place so that the actors can do all the believing and all the living and all the emotional stuff and all the production elements just perfect, like music on top of it.
Wow. It's beautiful to hear you talk about it. So I have a memory from seeing Alice, because I haven't seen a lot of your work, interestingly enough. I think just our lives have not melded in that way. And of course I'm out in Millbrook in the summers, but so we were in the balcony at the Avon seeing your Alice, my daughter and I guess 2016, is that when it was? Is that possible? 2015 or 16? Maybe
14, I think. Anyway.
Oh, how long ago? And you had everybody come up, and I feel like maybe it was Sanjay Talwar or something who gave us candy. You had the actors went out up and down and all around, and somehow in a very short amount of time we all got a candy, and I think somehow we're told not to unwrap it. But in that moment where you had, and I don't know how you got us to do it, you got us as an audience to unwrap that candy, and it was the sound of rain. And I was just like, okay, my mind is blowing now. And every time I see sort of genius type things like that, it helps deepen my art practice, right? And how I will think about it and how I will approach the fantastical nature of what we do. Because we don't, it's not like Saving Private Ryan where you can create with CGI and $50 million a battle scene. We're going to do a battle scene. We want to do something else with it, right?
Yeah.
So what you're doing, like you're doing these, you're making magic.
It's always my goal. I don't know if I always pull it off, but it's always my goal.
So I want to just ask you, because I read somewhere that you have a real interest, or you did at least, in Edward Gordon Craig, the director, which is weird. And I did
research.
I did a little bit of research. I'm going to send you the photo around my computer, and I have yellow sticky notes with all my notes. Wow. So it looked casual, but yes, I did some research. Interesting, he's the illegitimate son of Ellen Tracy, and I have a good friend I was in Mexico with when all of this nonsense happened, and she's named for Ellen Tracy, Edward Gordon Craig's mother.
Wow.
I have a quote, and I want you to respond to this based on all of that research you come into rehearsal with. Craig asserted that the director is the true artist of the theater, and controversially suggesting viewing actors as no more important than marionettes. Now, I know that's probably the worst quote there is about Craig, but will you tell me how you even know about him and where you see the actor inside of the practice.
Thank you. I haven't had to defend Edward Gordon Craig in a long time.
No, I'm a director, so I kind of liked it, but it's a very controversial thing to say.
It is a very controversial thing to say, and I actually have to distance myself from that quote in particular, and him in that quote. I mean, I think I wished that he hadn't said. I think he used the word uber marionette. I wish that he hadn't said uber marionette, because I think it's exactly the opposite of what I'd like to see in the theater. It's hardly fair to call it uber marionette. I even go out of my way to make sure supernumeraries are given names and histories, and you know, so it's kind of terrible.
Okay, so put that stuff aside. Like, that's ridiculous.
I know, but that's why it's controversial.
What is it about him then, separate from that?
Well, because he did believe that the actors were part of the scenography, and so in a lot of my work, the actors don't just, and I say that cautiously, I don't mean just. Caveat. Let me rephrase it. In a lot of my work, the actors also, because I like some of my favorite plays of all time are just, you know, people coming into a kitchen and doing their thing, you know. I'm a big Eugene O'Neill fan. Like, I love that stuff. I'm a big fan. So I don't mean just. So please, any actors listening, please forgive. I did not say just. However, you know, hearkening back to Theatre Smith Gilmore or any play in which there is invention, because I always think theater is a different form than film, and absolutely a different form than film. It's not like we couldn't afford to do a film, so we're making shows. That absolutely, I am not satiated right now, because, you know, people are like, well, Jill, if you want a story, go watch TV. It's like, that's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And part of, you know, and Shakespeare said it, you know, in the beginning with the chorus and the giant O, in Henry V, the idea of magic is inherent in theater, because how did you trick me? You were right in front of me. How did you make me see that? How did he sit down and there was a car underneath him? I don't understand how he did it. And that moment of childlike wonder is what helps us believe in the theater anyway. And so that is so with Edward Gordon Craig in particular, he shouldn't have said uber marionette, but anyway, he was the first person, I think, in theater history, if I'm not wrong about this, but who really thought you could use the actor's form and light to create the image that would transcend, would help the story transcend. So, and I mean transcend by creating an image that was a magic image.
But Robert Wilson is very similar. His work is work that I'm obsessed with. He could spend a week with an actor's hand on stage, and how the door would open and the light would shoot through the hand, and the projection of the light on the stage. And then the actor would say, well, what do you want me to be doing in terms of my story? And Wilson would quite often say, I don't care. Like, it's important. But you don't have to tell me. I don't need to know your inner story I'm interested in this thing. This is important. Of course the actor has to do this work. But Wilson, for sure, is more interested in the hand, the light, the door. And then my thing is, I'm not an actor, so I expect the actors to come with all that stuff, and then I'll respond to what they show me.
Yeah, a lot of actors will come with that, and I'm really grateful for them. But a lot of actors want to engage. Like, I've had to learn over the years, and it's a real flaw for me to have not been an actor first, is that I had to learn how to act through actors. Like, I don't act. I don't call myself one, but I had to learn what the craft was through watching actors. So learning how to speak to an actor about learning how to speak to an actor, I had to do it through learning how how other actors spoke to each other or something. Like it took me a long time to understand that. And I had some rough goes early on in my career because I wasn't talking to the actors right. I was not, I don't think I was ever as confident as, you know, Robert Wilson saying, I don't care what you think. Like, you know, just stand there with your hand.
Yeah. I mean, I say to actors quite often, I don't know what, I'm confused by what you're doing there. You don't have to tell me why you're doing it. All I can respond, like my response is just that it's confusing. So maybe the confusion is okay, or maybe try something else and then we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But I'm not I'm not a director who could ever go up on stage and say, can you move out of the way and I'll show you how to do it. And I know that's how some people do their practice, and I think it's valid. It's just, I wouldn't know what to do. I think actors, I say this to actors when I work with them, they should come in with that big bag of toys and tricks and show things. You know, I spend some time on table work, but eventually I just want people up on their feet showing things.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, Lynn Slotkin has just corrected me. It's Ellen Terry. I did know that, Ellen Terry, and my friend Ellen Terry Cole. Okay, so I know there's lots of questions Lindsay's just told me, but I do want to ask you, I have two more big questions. Well, I mean, my thing is full of questions, but I want to talk about Myra Bennett and Tempting Providence and why you became interested in her, because when I read about her doing my research, I was like, well, that play could be done at Fourth Line. Like, it's a history play. I'm so interested. And now you've got the theater that at some point is going to open for a summer, maybe not this summer, I don't know. But can you tell me about Myra Bennett? And then I just want to talk about your work at the NAC a little bit, and then we'll hand it over. Do you have to go right at 4 now? Can you go at 10 after 4? Because I know there's lots of questions, and I want
me? Oh, sure.
Okay, good. Right.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
So tell me about how you first heard about Myra Bennett, and then where Tempting Providence came from.
Okay. Myra Bennett, I had never heard of her. She's from the Northern Peninsula, so I'll do my Newfoundland for you.
Okay.
This is where I am here, just under my knuckle.
Okay.
And this is where Myra Bennett's from.
Oh my gosh.
And so Myra Bennett, I'd never heard of her, but she is a legend on those parts. And she used to go, I'll show you, she used to go up and down this coast here, probably from my knuckle to my knuckle. And she used to walk because there was nobody there. There was no nurse. There was no nurses there. So she used to walk Bombay here, I guess. And she was in Daniels Harbor up here. And then probably there was another doctor up in St. Anthony. So there was like a doctor here and a doctor here. And she was responsible for any medical aid all up and down this coast. And the only way you could get up and down the coast was by boat in the summer. And in the winter, if you got into trouble, you had to go by dog sled or you had to walk. And she came to Newfoundland for 1 year. She was supposed to go to Saskatchewan, but they said the need is greater in Newfoundland. So she came to Newfoundland as a midwife and didn't know till she got here just how little she'd have, how a boat used to come once a year with the supplies, you know, a couple of times during the summer.
Right,
so
yeah.
the beginning of the summer and the end of the summer, but all the winter, like from, I guess, October till, you know, May or June,
they were locked in, right?
They were locked in with the ice. And so pretty harsh conditions. Anyway, this wonderful woman, she came here from England, and it's a stranger in a strange land play. And she comes in and she says, she falls in love with this guy, or he falls in love with her, or whatever. She doesn't want anything to do with it because she's got lots of work to do. But she's very work focused. Just a love story, really. And she says to him, how he gets her to marry him is that he says, I heard that you'll stay here till they build a road. And they didn't build a road. And she came in 1918 or 1919. And they didn't build a road in that area until 1964. So she had to marry him. So she married this guy. But anyway, it's a beautiful story. And this woman, it was such a hero. And that play was just the strangest.
It's toured everywhere.
Yeah, it's been touring, and it's continuing to tour, actually, and continuing to play. I've gone through many, many casts with it. It was a really simple show. I can't remember. All I know, it was like in that way that I wanted things to be magic, things to appear. I was like, and I think critics came up with this idea, and they're right, but I wish that I had thought of it I don't recall, because I'll tell you a personal part of it is that I was getting ready to do the show and I liked the script and nobody thought, like, truly, Robert didn't, I didn't, like, it was just a little biography of this, like, it played in a 65-seat theater. And Gillian Buckle, who runs the company, who's just a wonderful person, she said, Jillian, a lot of the old people on the coast, they'll remember Mara. So I want it to go to the old age homes. So if you can make it so that it can move to the old age homes, like make it small enough. Don't put any walls or whatever. Make it small enough that I can go to the old age homes. I won't. So I said, okay. And then my dad died. And so I lost a week of rehearsal because I was supposed to go to rehearsal. Anyway, you know what, these things. And my dad died and I was in a bit of a haze like afterwards. And I showed up, you know, they gave me a week and they said the actors are going to be off book and whatever. The actors took over. And I showed up. This was in 2000 and, my God, maybe 2002.
I think that's what I read, yeah.
Yeah. And I showed up kind of, I feel like I slept walk through, but I was in, you know, Dad died like the week before. And I was like, yeah, like, you know, like it looks like a loaf of bread. Oh, yeah. Like put it on. It's like a dress. Like it wasn't like I didn't plan. Like it was really. It
wasn't like a big book. It was no big book.
No book. And I really, like, none of us thought much of it. Again, I was sleepwalking a little bit. And then on the dress rehearsal for the show, the costume designer started to cry, and he cried and cried and cried. I was like, Barry, are you all right? He's like, it's so beautiful. I was like, really? Anyway, 12 years later, you know, how many years later, 15 years later, it's still going. And it's just, Robert's writing, I just think Robert's writing is so extraordinary. It's so beautiful. And there's an image that I'll never, you know, there's been several Myras in the years, but Dee Dee Gillard-Rawlings, who was the originator of the show and just such a powerful, beautiful actor. And she's from that coast and she knows of what she speaks. And there's this beautiful moment in the play when she looks up. I can't even speak to it and I cry myself now. Yeah. But this beautiful moment in the play where they're lost on the ice and they're going to die. And it's the climax of the play. They're trying to save her brother-in-law who cut his foot off. And they're on the ice. And she's like, it's over. We're all going to perish here on this coast. And she looks up and the men coming over the ice. Oh, it's so beautiful. And all she does is say, there they are. That's all she says. There they are. And it's just like, I don't need a film of these guys. I don't need to hear anything. All I got to do is look at Dee Dee going, there they are. And as soon as she says it, they're there.
Right? They're true. She's authentic. She's in the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we need.
Sometimes. Yeah, beautiful actors. Beautiful.
Wow.
Anyway, so they're naming the theater after her.
I know. And at some point, people are going to come. Would you go back to your hand, Newfoundland, and tell me where Cowhead is in relation to all of this?
Yes, ma'am. So, Cowhead and Bombay there. It's probably there.
Okay.
There.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna ask you 2 more questions, and then I'm gonna be generous and let other people talk and ask questions. But my next question is: did the Simonovich Award winning the Simonovich, did it change your life?
Oh my God, yes.
Was it the money and people knowing who you were more? I mean, I know you had toured shows around the country. I read some great stories about trying to get the money to tour, but how did it change your life?
Well, I can't overstate how poor I was.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't overstate that. We were really poor, but we were, we were really poor, but it was because of our own stubbornness. You know, we were really trying to make a go of this company, and we would tour. But we pay all the expenses first and hire the actors and pay them. You know, we had to work out. We don't really have equity in Newfoundland, so occasionally, but we pay people equity rate.
Yeah.
Pay people equity rate. But it was like, when it came down to whether I would get paid or not. So, like, that sometimes was questioned. So when that came, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. I'd never had any money before. So just having,
the money gave you breath, in like pause and breath inside your life and work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're so lucky in Newfoundland. You can buy my house. I bought my house, like, I bought my house because it's the same price as rent, even with the down payment. So it's not, you'd rent because I don't know, that was years ago, but you'd rent because you couldn't be bothered to own, but it was really cheap to buy a house. So I had a house, so that's lucky. But we're really poor. But it really was, I don't know that I would have gotten, the NAC job, certainly, without it. But also people treated me a bit different afterwards. I think it was surprising.
So for people who don't know, it's the largest and most prestigious Canadian Theatre Award. There's $100,000 attached to it. It's Lou Siminovich and his wife, and then Elizabeth and Tony Compter, right? Who were with BMO then? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's right.
But,
and a bunch of founders, yeah.
Yeah, and so 75 goes to you, and then of course you picked Danielle for or is it Irvine? Is that for the other 25? Okay, so I have another couple questions. Have you ever had a Joe job?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay. Give me some highlights. Give me some quick highlights of Joe job. I was convinced you've never had a Joe job. I was gonna be like, when I've worked in a jewelry store and I catered, she's probably, but anyways.
Oh, okay. It's funny because it's still with me and it's still a dream of mine, is to go back to it, if you can believe it. I used to worked for years and years, all the way through university, and to help support my other career. But I used to work in old age homes as a healthcare aide, and I feed people, make beds. I used to read to people. I cleaned.
So what we'd call a PSW now, a personal support worker.
Yeah.
I had this incredible vision over the last few weeks with everything that's going on. I'm a little emotional right now about it all, but I feel like, should I be doing something like that? Should I go into old age homes? I actually thought about going into my parents' old age home and volunteering as a PSW, so I'd get to see my parents for the first time in 2 months. But wow, that's amazing that you did that.
Yeah, I did it for a long time, and you should do it if you can. I mean, if it's safe for you to do it, gosh.
I'm thinking, I know. Well, when you see Jane Philpott goes, throws on PPE and goes into, the one here in Markham that's been so badly hit.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going along, you're living in Newfoundland. I think you might be pregnant at this point or thinking about having a baby, and somebody approaches you, I assume, to apply for the job at the NAC?
Yeah. Yeah, that was funny.
Was it just, of course I'll apply, of course I want this thing, I want to leave my imprint? Tell me about how that all comes about, and then I'm literally going to stop.
Okay, well, I'll try to be fast. It was a very crazy time in my life. I had a baby. I don't know how to put it. I planned to have this baby. I was, we really worked hard at it. And arranged it to have this baby, and she was little, like a tiny baby, and Nancy Webster, the wonderful Nancy Webster, had been given a directive from Peter Herndorf, who used to run the National Arts Center, to give me a call. Nancy, like me too, I guess. I don't know. I think so. And she called me up. No, that's a lie. The first thing that happened, the first thing that happened was Jim Milan called me up, and he said, you just had a baby. I got a couple of kids. I can't do that job full time. You can't do that job full time, but me and you like each other. We'll have fun together. You do the new Canadian development work. I'll direct the hits and bring in, audiences and do the, the hits. Yep. And you do the new Canadian work and make the thing happen. We'll co-artistic direct together. He said, I can't do it full time. You can't either. I said, geez, Jim, no. Oh, and I mean, no way. I knew Peter Hinton a little bit, and had huge admiration for him, but I just saw that it was really taxing, and it just seemed to be, because I was involved in Magnetic North at the beginning, and it just seemed to be like an incredible weight of a thing, like an incredible responsibility. And I would have had the energy to do it, but I was still sore, right, from the birth. So I like literally had this tiny issues in my hand. And anyway, Jim said that, and then I don't know, it's like the witches in Macbeth, I guess, but I was like, oh, maybe. Anyway, then he called me back. He said, Jill, come on, let's apply. So I said, okay, let's apply. Anyway, then he called me back, and I had applied. I put a thing together, a little letter. Nancy called me up and said, yeah, we're interested in talking to you. Will you give us a call in a week? Then Jim called me back and said, my wife said no.
Oh.
I was like, what? We were going to do this together. He said, yeah, she doesn't want, like, he had little kids too, like, 7, 8 years old. And he said, we can't with her, because she had a career in Toronto, and he said, I can't go back and forth with the kids. And so he said, I'm really sorry, I can't do it. And Nancy said to me, would you consider applying anyway? I said, well, the work is done, so I can let the fates tell me the rest. And I said to my husband, whatever happens, right now we can afford a bottle of wine and the chicken. So that's all we need, really. Get our baby. We go have our little house in St. John's. I was prepared to settle down and be a gigging director, occasional, it would be small, but that was no more than I deserve. And so little baby was there, and Nancy said, come, we want to see you for an interview. I was like, I couldn't get my head around it, because I don't know, I guess I didn't think I was as smart as Peter or Marty. I feel like I was young at the time, but I wasn't really. I was 40, 41. But yeah, Peter and Marty, I don't know, I just had so much respect for both of them, and I knew them because I'd worked, workshops and done different things. And Peter had invited me to direct, so funny, how ironic. Peter had invited me to direct a show for the following season, the year. So I had been invited, and I was so excited about directing a show for the National Arts Center. I was so honored to be invited to direct a show. So I couldn't believe my luck anyway. So there I was. Anyway, and so my first show at the NEC was in my first season, because Peter left then.
Wow. Oh
yeah.
My God.
Anyway.
And so I keep lying to people and saying I'm going to go to questions, but I had my daughter at 39 and a half, 6 years of in vitro fertilization to get my kid. So she's a very wanted kid. I'd lived a lot of life. You were close to the same age, right? You were almost 40 when you had her, or 40?
Fully 40, yeah.
Yeah. So I run a theater company. I'm exhausted for years, like years of exhaustion. Do you find that too? And how do you balance it all?
It was really hard. It was really hard. I cannot pretend that it was not hard. There was a time that I was trying to go somewhere, and she was standing next to the toilet, and she was 2 or 3, maybe 2. And there was a car, like a taxi. I was going to the airport. There's a taxi blowing, and I was on the stairs, and she was standing there like, don't go, right? And I was like, I gotta go, honey, come give mommy a hug, Anyway, and she peed on the floor. She was just like so angry with me.
Yeah.
Because I'd been trying to work with her on that, So it's just that kind of like, and then I was just like, I have to go. And she wouldn't even talk to me. She was only so little. And it's just that constant not being enough, not being mom enough, not being artistic director enough. Yeah, it's really hard. I can't say, oh no, here's how you do it, because it was super hard. But I have to say she's a great kid, and she's used to me now, and she knows that I love her, even though I'm, back and forth and away a lot. My husband is really good. He gave up his, again, I'm in his studio here in Newfoundland, but he lives with me in Ottawa, 7 or 8 months a year, and really has sacrificed a lot so that he can be with me up there, and we can all be together. So I feel really lucky about that. But it's tricky. Mom's tricky. Mom's
Yeah,
tricky.
because, you know, and not to put down any of the dads, and nobody needs to send me an email, and dads are great, but there is a mom thing where we kind of manage the house while working and the kid while working full time,
Well,
or
I think it's,
more than full time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Don is a great cook, but I am the only one who sees, you know, women. I don't know if it's a woman thing. I don't know if it's a director thing, but it's like, I see a clean kitchen. It's like, I see it.
Yes.
I see it. And he doesn't see it,
Yes.
but he knows it's what I want. But I see it. I can see it. So I spend a lot of time like rage cleaning, and then it's like, Jill, stop rage cleaning.
Well, I have a cleaner before the pandemic for me. And the kitchen is the one, right? Like, I'll cook a meal after coming home from long days, or now being here. I'll say to my husband, please just clean up afterwards. He goes, what does it matter? You're not going to be even in there. I said, the knowledge that behind the painting on the wall is the filthy kitchen is making me nuts.
Yeah, I guess it's biological. I don't know. Or because my mother was like a nursing instructor. She was busy all the time. My dad worked, he had a little garage next to the house, and he was more home with us than she was. But, you know, and Don is so good. Dad was so good. Dad would make our supper and pork chops and whatever, macaroni and cheese and stuff. And then Mom would come home and rage clean.
Oh, yeah, that is a great phrase. If my kid and my husband, who are both here in other rooms during their life, could hear you talk about that, they'd be like, yeah.
I got to stop doing it, actually, because they're so good. Like, they put up with a lot.
Well, mine are not that good. They need to clean more, but it is the reality right now. We're also on top of each other too much right now, obviously. Okay, so you're amazing. I'm so lucky you spent this time talking to me. I want to make sure we have time for the questions. I mean, I have lots of more sticky notes, so I will, if we don't get a lot of questions, I will go back to my sticky notes, and I'll try to let you go within the next 20 minutes. Is that okay?
Sure, so long as I'm not boring people, but I guess people can go. People could just go.
No, people can go and we don't know, so it's great. To me, I'm only interested, you're not boring me. Lindy, how are you gonna tell us about questions?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So we have actually quite a few questions that have come in. So thanks all of the attendees for sending your questions in. A couple comments to start us off though. We had a comment, I think the notation software is called Finale. Hi, Jillian, from Amy Matizio.
Yes. It is called Finale. You're right. Thank you, Amy.
And then another comment from Deb. This is tremendous, and I look forward to listening to it again and probably again. So,
is that our Deb, or
it
Deb?
is Deb Williams, yes, director.
We love her. She directs and acts at Fourth Line sometimes and is big other than that.
And so for our first question, Gillian, you mentioned some male mentors. Do you have any female ones?
Oh my God, yes, indeed I do. Lois Brown was a really important, and still is a really important mentor for me. She also, I mean, she's a legend mentor. She was Rick Mercer's mentor, Andrew Younghusband, Canada's Worst Driver. She was his mentor, right? She was incredible, and she really had a huge influence on my life because she allowed me to, again, so much of what I was able to do when I was much younger was because other people just gave me the keys. You know?
Can I read to you what you wrote about her in your Seminovich?
Oh, Lois, yeah.
Yeah, and you said, all right. So Lois, I'm so proud to be on the short list with you, and I've got the opportunity to thank you here in front of all these people, as you were one of my mentors. So thank you, and I love you, and I'm really lucky to have forced you to hire me.
I did.
Pretty great. Pretty great. Pretty cool to be nominated with her, and also you were so gracious in your speech to her.
Oh, she was and still is very, very brilliant and a visionary.
That's awesome. Lindy.
Okay, a couple more comments have just come in. So we have from Julie, we are not bored, we are inspired, thank you. And from Amanda, loving this, I could listen all day.
Thank you.
And another question. So a question for both Kim and Gillian from David Rockney Corrigan in Kingston, who's
You
a
remember?
reporter.
So, yeah, David's with TVO, and he just called me today, and he was one of your students at
I
NTS.
remember Rockney well. Hi, Rockney.
He says, P.S. Hi, Jillian. So he says hi back.
Good.
And his question for both of you is, it might be many months until our regional theaters are back up and performing for audiences. I admire the effort that theaters are making to adapt to the situation, like this online event. Obviously, traditional theater is very different from Zoom or YouTube. I know it's early days still, but what is something you've seen online, live or taped performance, theater, etc., that has used technology well? And do theater makers suddenly need to think about YouTube audiences?
Oy.
Go ahead, Tim.
No, you go ahead, because I have strong opinions on it. So you go ahead.
You know, I too have strong opinions on it. I think you'll never, maybe you'll capture 85% of what a show is if you film it brilliantly. If you know you're the National Theatre and you film it as beautifully and with as much money as you need and all of the things that you need, you'll capture 85%. You'll never capture the great spirit that enters theaters and the interest of people at theaters. So I think that's something that I'm always longing for when I see online stuff. I've enjoyed some, the NAC did Canada Presents, which was we had $700,000 that we raised to do this kind of rather emergency funding situation for artists. And I think that music is better suited, if I'm honest. I think music is much better suited to the YouTube form. And, unless you're actually performing a show that happens on Zoom or whatever, it's hard to, it's hard to really get down with the storytelling in this format for me. I saw a little bit of the Midsummer Night's Dream that I think they were called the Pirate Group at Stratford did. That was pretty good. I saw some of our Canada Performs was really great. Rebecca Northern did a piece with Tony Napo that was fun. And
Line 8, which is taking off.
Yeah, and so that's really great. And the way that was performed, it had a kind of a Tinder kind of like like chat.
We were being like peepers into something intimate, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like something kind of peep showy about that. It takes a lot of money and time to make it look good.
It really does, yeah.
And I'm not sure where the money will come from in terms of filming our stuff. Like Lindy and I were just talking about this when we were doing the setup, and I'm not opposed to trying it, but my heart wants to be at the core of theater for me is the relationship between art and audience, live and present. Theater doesn't exist for me until an audience is sitting there responding to what the actors are presenting. And so the kind of basis of my art practice. So if it's not live, I'll try stuff, but I'm feeling a longing.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, I get the online thing and I get the film thing. I'm really grateful. I'm a subscriber to one of those, I subscribe to Broadway HD and Marquee, and I'm really glad I have access to that, because if I can't see it, I'd rather see it that way. But if I could see it, I'd rather see it.
Yeah. I've been excited for the last 2 weeks, imagining what the first thing I'll get to see live is again, and not taking it for granted.
Do you want to see a comedy or something like Unity 1918 that reflects the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not afraid of seeing a dark piece, because now everybody's saying, oh, what kind of season are you going to have after this? It's all going to have to be light and comedy. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe, or maybe not. I don't know. I don't even. What about you? Are you, like, do you think about that, or?
Oh, I do. Yeah. I'm thinking a lot about how we're going to end up programming on the other side of it, because it depends on when we come back, and what's allowed and what's not allowed. And, if we have a cast of more than 10, can you have that? Or will people feel comfortable, in a show that it's very up close and personal? I don't know. We're trying to see how to predict, but I think something something light will be helpful.
Right. Yeah, we've written at Fourth Line, there's still, maybe deluded hope on my part that we might get our August show in, some version of it. And so we wrote a COVID document about how to keep audience and creators safe. I actually think audiences are easy to keep safe. Like I cut my theater in half and I make them wear masks, and we have a whole protocol around PPE and disinfecting. But then the thing was the audience, or the acting company and the technicians and designers. How do we keep them safe? And then I was talking to a friend the other night on the phone, and all the German theaters are going back because there's 359 theaters in Germany. They're state run, and so they're all paid by the state, so they want to get them back working, and they're doing socially distanced staging. And I have a big 100-acre property outside. I actually could, and I got it. I'm getting a little bit excited about one play, doing it socially distanced, where no actor is ever closer than 6 feet to another actor.
Interesting. You need my grid.
Well, exactly, right? You come and bring your kid, and I'll put your kid and my kid in the play far enough apart, and we'll see you in July. But I did start to think about the tension of actors never being allowed to get very close to each other on stage. It got me kind of excited.
Mm-hmm. I have to be purposeful. Interesting.
Yeah. All right, Lindy.
So we have another comment from Cynthia, who says, "Thank you, Kim and Jillian. A wonderful and inspiring conversation. In these days of no theater, it really warmed my soul." And that's Cynthia Ashberger.
I was going to say, Cynthia's the one who just told me about the German theaters. I was like, I should probably say it was Cynthia I was talking to.
And another question here, Gillian, how did your family feel about your interest in the arts? Did your parents understand your passion?
My mother really loves the theater, So she did. I don't know how she felt about me going away to school in particular, but she let me, I did it on student loans, so I didn't charge her for it. My dad never really got it, but he didn't discourage me. He didn't quite understand what I was getting on with. But
you said in one piece of writing I read that your mother had read a parenting book, and she was trying to support you, and your dad said,
That's it.
Yeah.
I didn't speak very much.
Yeah, I love that. But it must have been like exciting and also a little bit puzzling that you wanted to do this thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not very usual in my town. It wasn't, there was nobody who wanted to do that.
Yeah.
But it was exciting. Mom became a real theater fan, but she brought me to see, I think, Pajama Game when I was 16 or 17. So she was into it enough, Yeah. Yeah. And there was always music, a lot of music, and there's a lot of music around Newfoundland, so there was always a lot of music around, and performance is a thing, like these community concerts and stuff like that. That was happening, pageants, but no theater per se. But then when I came to St. John's in downtown and started going around downtown, that became a thing. And now it's really part of the culture.
Yeah. Linda, do you have other questions?
I do, a few more. So for both of you, why are you drawn to directing? What is it in that practice that appeals to you?
Now you can go, Kim.
Okay. So I don't know how to act, and I'm not a good actor. So I don't, not that I don't understand, but I don't need the fulfillment of the relationship with the audience, me on stage with audience. And I love process. So for me, my jam is rehearsals. I love rehearsals. I love the creation and the development of new work, which is primarily my career. So I'm a little bit of a control freak. Don't tell anyone. So I love the control of the big picture, the maestro kind of picture of it. And yeah, I don't know how to act. So that's me. Tell me what about you, Jillian?
I couldn't say intellectually why, but I know that I did want to be involved in the theater. And when I was acting briefly, I always wanted to be on the outside. I was inside and going, I
Yeah.
I was inside, always watching, like with that extra eye. I was always sitting in the audience watching the thing and going, this isn't right. This isn't, So I was, it was like an itch that had to be scratched. And then when I finally got out to do it, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, it was really exciting to me. And then, of course, when I was, I had seen some shows and gotten very inspired then about what was possible. And it's so much of it is about the imagination. So much of it is about being a kid and getting a box, a refrigerator box and making a house out of it. Like,
and play, right? It's play. That's what we do. We want to play.
Yeah, but in a really sophisticated way.
Of course, without question, except when we don't want to be sophisticated.
Okay, so this question is regarding kaleidography. Fascinating. Not surprised to hear Gillian won the prestigious Simonovich Prize in 2004. Her ability to express and explain in the same way a world-class scientist might emulate scientific excellence. Very fitting. Who did Gillian choose as her prodigy? Has she ever worked or presented alongside an eminent scientist?
Oh, okay, a lot there.
Well, I'm really fascinated by scientists. And in fact, I had just directed Copenhagen, which was canceled right before we went on stage. Science is really my bag a lot. And it inspires a lot of how my storytelling is done. Like, a lot of Neverending Story was based on images of astronomy and that kind of astral physics and what goes on in the sky. So now I've lost track of the question. What is that?
The second part was about your prodigy for the Simonovich.
Oh yeah, Danielle Irvine. So Danielle is awesome, and Danielle is like the yin to my yang, and she runs this company, a Shakespeare company in Newfoundland called Perchance. She's an extraordinary, really very, 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 very extraordinarily good coach and director for Shakespeare. And she really knows what she's at in that. And of course, I get a lot of credit because I do things that make people scratch their heads. But Danielle is like a thoroughbred theater director, and in my mind, she was always under-credited. But recently, she's gotten all kinds of accolades and praise, which I really am happy about. She was just the Artist of the Year in Newfoundland Labrador, which I'm really proud of her for that. But Danielle and I had worked together quite a bit, where I would come up with this grand concept. Like, we staged a production of Midsummer Night's Dream in a mine. In
black light.
Right? In blacklight, yeah. So I wanted to do this Midsummer Night's Dream in blacklight because I found this paint that you could paint that was invisible in regular light, but when you turned on blacklight, it would show up. And I thought, well, that's great. So the fairy world and the real world were reflective of each other. So we doubled the entire cast, and the cast had regular costumes on, and then you turn on the black light and they would be the fairies. so cheap, right? But also fun, because it's true. Like, you can double, people double Titania and Hippolyta, or the king, the king of the fairies. Yeah. People do that. But I thought, what if Mustard Seed was also Lysander? And what if? So
Oberon.
Oberon, yeah. So the only person I think we didn't double was Bottom, because he's in both worlds. But it was really great and crazy show to do, because Danielle had been set up this company in a mine on Bell Island. That's a underground mine, very, very dark, of course. What do you do when you have darkness? You do a Midsummer Night's Dream in blacklight. So that's what we did. And she did all the text. She did all of the work with the actors doing that. And of course, that's the thing, it's like, I got all kinds of credit for that show because of the interesting idea, but Danielle did all the meat. And so I always think we were a good team. So when the opportunity came for me to acknowledge her, I was very happy to do so.
That's so cool. Lindy, just before you ask a couple more questions, I wanted, because it rolls into what we were talking about at the very beginning that you wanted to talk about was director education, mentorship and education. Part of our Epic Women's Directing project at Fourth Line is I made so much of the historical work we do is focused on men, based on men's stories, like it's men, right? So I'm there 26 of the last 29 years, but right from the beginning. And when I became artistic director, I made a commitment that besides our founder, Rob Winslow, who always directs the world premieres of his own plays, and one other director that we already had in the mix when I took over, that women would direct at Fourth Line for the foreseeable future. And also, so that's my commitment. And also we would train women directors in this epic style. I mean, I've directed as many as 63 people. We have 100 acres. It's pretty amazing. And so we have assistant directors and apprentice directors and auditing directors, and they're all women. So will you just talk about the dearth of, not necessarily just for women, but the dearth of director education and what some of your thinking on that?
Well, I think a lot of interesting programs have come up recently. You know, the assistant directing programs at Shaw and Stratford are really interesting. Like I find them really, really interesting, really cool programs. And the universities, some of the universities now have them. I think it's a philosophical issue. I think it's a philosophical issue that I have with it because, okay, my daughter's here and she's driving me crazy and I can't focus because my daughter's here. So
Sorry.
What do you need, honey? I'm then doing an interview in front of people, but people know this is what it is to be a mom.
Absolutely. Well, and I knew we were on borrowed time, right? Because an 8-year-old, hello.
We're on borrowed time.
Don't last so much. Yeah.
She could only do so much without mom. So
yeah.
Okay, what do you need? Because
Well,
I'm busy.
I set the timer.
Okay, you
and
gotta
then
go.
I looked at it.
She's gotta go.
And now it's
Okay.
driving me crazy.
Okay,
so
great.
Can you tell me how much more time?
10 minutes.
Okay.
Goodbye.
And we honestly, I promise no more than that. Thank you, sweetheart. So generous.
So generous.
Yeah.
Do you have to go upstairs now?
Okay.
She's
Okay.
over counting.
I know. I don't mind her. Oh, she was counting off to the side. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So director.
So that's what it's like to be a mom, and theater director, and doing an interview.
Yeah.
Sweetheart.
Beautiful.
I just couldn't concentrate on this because I do feel strongly about it. Anyway, so I do think there's some really great programs. One of the things that I'm always I was really grateful for in the York program at the time was that we were in that stream to become directors, because I think that directing is a really specific task. It's just because you're a great actor or a great designer or a great stage manager, it doesn't necessarily give you the skills you need to be a director. Nor, if you're a great director, it gives you the skills to necessarily also be a great stage manager and actor. And I think that that's where we end up with this weird pyramid, of directing, where it's like, oh, the director's on top. So the director's going to give me a line reading because he knows better or she knows better, because she was an actor and now she's risen through the ranks to become the director. And I think we've got to flatten that so that it's more like, there's the actors and this is the designers and production crew and the designers. These are the actors and the heart there. And there's the director here. And that it's not like this at all. It's actually more like this. So the director becomes the center of the hub, or the person who's negotiating. And that's what I love so much about these Uber docs, where everybody's on the page together, is because everybody's getting all the same information. And my lighting designer is getting inspired by my set designer, and my set designer is getting inspired by the sound design that's coming through, and they can all see it. So we have this central thing. And then I'm saying, oh, a little faster, or this music is a little aggressive or whatever. Then everybody understands that. It's not, nobody's in isolation, and the director can be such an important part of putting the the spin together, but not, I know better than you.
Mhm.
And I think that's always my neurosis about people feeling that leadership has to come because you've already mastered something else. I think it's that you actually, leadership, that kind of leadership, is something you also have to train for, or something that you also have to get good at in order to really pull it off. And some people have it naturally, you know. I always thought, you know, Kenneth Branagh was a very good director, very good actor. There's lots of people who do it really, really well. They're both, and they're good, really strong. Rabil Pash, you know, really strong in both fields. But he was also directing when he was really, really young as well. So I just think we used to, I think this has changed now, but we used to hold directing off. Kids were not to direct until they had gotten enough experience to become a good enough actor to tell the actors what to do. But it's like, I don't tell what the actors what to do. I just tell them where I'd like them to stand. That's it. And I like to engage with them so that we can get the best possible performance. But I'm not going to deliver their line for them, because that wouldn't be authentic either. So I guess that's why I feel passionately about it, is that we need to train. If somebody wants to become a director, then get the tools into their hands in first year. Get the tools into their hands, so that, because every time you do it, you learn more, you fall on your face, you embarrass yourself, you ruin it, everybody hates you, you know, you alienate people. All those things have to happen. It's way better that they happen when you're 22 than they happen when you're 42, you know, starting out. You know, people who have been in the business a long time, they don't have the same growing pains as young directors. But I think there's people who were young directors, like Mitchell Cushman. Guy's a visionary, you know, really great, brilliant young director. And never, I don't think he was ever an actor, but he had access to the tools. Now, another young director who's starting out as a director, but is a very brilliant actor, and such a smart director, is Makailah Davies, who was my assistant or associate director on Never-Ending Story. And man, how useful she was, because she was an actor first and continues to be an actor. But she was able to see all kinds of things in the play that I didn't see or couldn't understand in the text work, and love to dig at that stuff. So I think you know, having associates or partners who excel at what you don't, so useful, so useful. And how great is that, to be able to take a younger person and engage with them so that you kind of fill in for each other what you need. It's marvelous.
Great. That's great. I 100% agree. Lindy, do you want to do one more question, and then we've got to release Jill, because I made a promise to her daughter.
Sure, of course.
She just wants to get on the internet.
I know. No, that is the world she knows. That is
not longing for me.
No, I.
So our final question is for Jill. Your 2014 production of Oil and Water at the LSPU Hall stands out when I think of productions that have changed me as an artist. What productions stand out to you that have changed your way of thinking or working?
Wow, what a great question. Well, that early Theatre Smith Gilmore piece did. It was called, To Cry Is Not So. And there was a piece that I saw when I was very young called, at the LSPU Hall, that was called Jacksmith, that had Andy Jones and members of Sheila's Brush doing a jacktail, which is Newfoundland folktale, that I couldn't believe, like I just couldn't believe I was seeing this story on stage. It's like, oh, that's us, you know. It was so exciting. And so my passion for Newfoundland taking care of itself on stage was ignited at that time. And I carry that with me to the National Arts Centre, that Canadians have great stories to tell, and we deserve to tell them. And I love the local stories. The more local it is, the better, if you ask me, because it's so meaningful to the community it's from. And I saw The Adventures of a Black Girl in Search of God, was hugely meaningful to me. I was so blown away by Janet Sears, and the way she used that chorus really blew my mind back in the day. There's a lot of beautiful, there's so many beautiful shows that I've seen in my life. I've literally seen thousands of them. But those are three that literally changed how I saw theater. Oh, the old Trout Puppet Workshop did a show called The Unlikely Birth of Istvan that that changed me as well. I was just like, it was magic. I was just, and I got to, you know, I saw it in Calgary, and everybody used to go to the same bar called the Auburn. And so I went to the Auburn, and these bearded, huffy guys, not huffy, elite, I mean, like huffy guys, it came in, and I just burst into tears in front of them. I was like, and they actually had to hug me. They had to console me because I was so, and it's a comedy. It's like, it was not even sad. It was just like the gods were with these guys. They were magic. They were magic. And I just, you know, I was a fully grown person there. I think they're younger than me, but I was just like so moved by this magic that was flying off these guys. Anyway, eventually got to work with them quite a few times, actually, because they were so cool about it. I was just like, I can't talk to you guys. And they're like, what is wrong with this woman? Because I knew somebody who knew them or whatever. And I just couldn't talk to them. Anyway, and we eventually became friends, and we're still working together. We're doing a project together in a couple of years. So we just kind of loved each other. But it was that kind, I was like, I want to make work like you know, like Claudia. Everybody would have seen I, Claudia. Like, who doesn't want to make work like that? Who doesn't want to make work that has the gods with it? Who doesn't want to make that? That's all we want.
It's one of my 5 most perfect productions. For me, I always talk about it being transformative. You're talking about the gods, which is a beautiful way of talking about it. For me, it's like transformative theater that can change our lives and the world around them. With one person in an empty space, basically, and some masks. I mean, what the heck? Magic. Lindy, I'm gonna let Jillian go because we have taken so much of your time, but this has been such a panacea for my soul, my sad, bruised theater soul, to sit with you for 2 hours in this crazy, unknowable time. I am so deeply grateful. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, it's my pleasure. I went on and on and on, but thank you, and thank you for indulging me, and thank you everybody for watching. You're very kind. Beautiful.
And yeah, so we will see you all back here next week at the same time, if you can come at 2:30 with the incredible Judith Thompson. And I'm going to dig into hers. You kind of understand the format now. And thank you all.